Karen's voice cut through the morning air like broken glass. "You don't belong here! This is HOA property now." I froze on my porch as I watched men in neon vests bolt a massive iron fence right across my driveway, locking me inside my own ranch. The clang of metal against post echoed like a prison door slamming shut. I shouted, "That's my land!" But Karen just smirked, dangling a shiny key in her hand. "Not anymore," she sneered. Neighbors gathered, whispering, recording on their phones. My chest burned with rage until I realized something they didn't know. The land under their perfect little homes was already mine. The morning air was cool, the kind that carried the earthy smell of dew on wild grass, and I stood on my porch with coffee in hand, letting the stillness wrap around me. My ranch stretched wide, with oak trees rising proud and twisted, their shadows stretching across the dirt path that led to my barn. Beyond the tree line, cicadas hummed their constant song, broken only by the call of a distant crow. This was the life my grandfather built, passed down through blood and sweat, a place that felt real, raw, and alive. But when I looked just over the fence line, the contrast was blinding. Rows of identical houses gleamed white and perfect, lawns trimmed like carpets, every mailbox the same shape, painted the same sterile color. Their silence wasn't peaceful. It was suffocating, the kind of order that smothered the soul. Karen came strutting out from that world like she owned the air itself, clipboard in hand, sunglasses perched on her face even though the sun hadn't fully risen. She walked like the ground was hers, shoulders back, chin sharp, every step deliberate. Behind her was Tom, her husband, tall but hollow in presence, his eyes stuck to the pavement like gravity had him chained. And trailing not far behind was Gloria, the neighborhood's mouthpiece, who carried gossip like a loaded weapon, always whispering to whoever would listen. When Karen saw me leaning on my fence post, she smirked, the kind of smirk that promised trouble before a word was spoken. She lifted her chin, scanning my land like it was an eyesore. The silence between us stretched tight, charged with her disapproval, until she finally opened her mouth. "You need to repaint this fence," she barked, tapping the clipboard like a judge hitting her gavel. I looked at the fence, weathered but sturdy, still doing the job my grandfather built it for decades ago. Sweat dripped down my temple as I set my tools down and wiped my hands. "This is my ranch," I said slowly, keeping my voice level. "Not your HOA playground." Her lips pressed together in a thin line, but I saw the flash of annoyance behind those sunglasses. "We have standards in this community," she shot back, gesturing toward the polished neighborhood behind her. "Your property reflects poorly on the rest of us." My chest tightened with laughter, but it wasn't humor, it was disbelief. "Your community stops at that line," I said, pointing at the clear boundary where her grass ended and my dirt road began. Karen didn't back down. She stepped closer, her perfume clashing with the scent of earth and cedar. "We'll see about that," she said coldly, scribbling something onto her clipboard as if her handwriting could change the law. Tom stayed silent, but his posture stiffened like he knew things were about to escalate. Gloria leaned in, whispering loud enough for me to hear. "Told you he wouldn't cooperate." They turned and walked back toward their kingdom of uniformity, leaving me standing at the fence, heat building in my chest. I leaned against the post, staring at the identical rooftops beyond, watching how the sunlight bounced off their perfect lines, like they were trying to blind the world to any imperfection. My land was messy, yes, but it was mine. Every crooked board, every patch of tall grass, every sound of freedom. That night, I sat on my porch listening to the crickets sing, trying to shake off the irritation like dust on my boots. The stars stretched clear and endless above, a sight no HOA could regulate, but my peace felt chipped at the edges. In the distance, I spotted figures at the cul-de-sac. Shadows gathered under the street lamp. Gloria's voice carried even through the night air, sharp and whispery, and each time she leaned in, heads turned toward my land. The pointing, the nodding, the hushed tones. It was all aimed at me, like I was the villain in their story. My jaw tightened as I watched their silhouettes break apart and disappear into the glow of their homes. For the first time, the boundary line between my world and theirs felt less like a line, and more like a fuse waiting to be lit. The days after the fence went up felt like living under someone else's thumb. Every movement I made watched, every breath measured. Each time I tried to drive out, I had to sit in my truck staring at that locked gate until Karen decided to stroll over with her keys, moving slow just to remind me she had control. Sometimes she didn't even bother showing up right away, letting me wait under the heat while neighbors peeked through blinds and recorded me with their phones. Their muffled laughter carried through the air, faint but sharp enough to cut. My ranch, once a place of freedom, now felt like a cage they had built around me. Even the animals sensed it. The horses paced, restless, and the dogs barked at the fence as if they knew it didn't belong. Every creak of that metal lock made my chest tighten with rage. Then came the slips of paper, folded neat but cruel, stamped with HOA letterhead like it gave them authority over me. The first one claimed my livestock were visible from the community and fined me $250. Another accused me of excessive noise after 9 at night, though all I'd done was close the barn doors while my dogs barked. One even fined me for improper holiday decorations, though I hadn't strung a single light. I held the papers in my hand, fingers trembling between fury and disbelief, knowing full well I wasn't bound by their rules. Still, they piled up like insults, little daggers left on my porch to remind me of their reach. They weren't about money. They were about humiliation. I stormed over to Karen's porch one evening. The stack of fines crumpled in my fist. She sat in her perfect chair, iced tea sweating in her hand, sunglasses reflecting my own anger back at me. "Karen, what is this garbage?" I demanded, thrusting the papers at her. She didn't even flinch, her lips curving with satisfaction. "Everyone here follows the same rules," she said coolly, tapping her glass with one manicured nail. I stepped closer, my voice sharp. "This isn't your neighborhood. This is my land." Her head tilted slightly, almost mocking. "Not for long," she replied, her tone dripping with promise. From the yard next door, Gloria chimed in with a smirk. "People are saying you've been violent, that you threatened workers." My chest burned. "That's a lie. And you know it," I snapped. But she only shrugged like the truth didn't matter. The rumors spread faster than wildfire through dry brush. At the grocery store, I felt eyes on me, whispers trailing behind my back as I walked down the aisles. At church, families who once shook my hand avoided my pew, eyes sliding past me as if I wasn't there. Even Marcus, my closest friend from town, stopped answering my calls, silence filling the space where his voice used to be. It was isolation, thick and heavy, pressing down on my chest at night when the crickets sang louder than my own thoughts. I'd grown up here, known this land all my life, yet suddenly I felt like an outcast in my own home. That was their power, breaking me down not with force but with whispers and walls. The breaking point came when I caught them on my land again, Karen with her clipboard and 2 other board members carrying tape measures. My boots pounded against the earth as I stormed toward them, fury burning in my throat. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I barked, voice echoing through the trees. Karen looked up calmly as if I were the intruder. "We're assessing improvements," she said. "This whole ranch could be turned into a community dog park." The words hit me like a slap, absurd and insulting. Yet she stood there with utter confidence. I clenched my fists, veins pulsing. "You're out of your mind," I growled. Her eyes narrowed, steel glinting behind those dark lenses. "You can fight us," she said, her tone cutting. "But the HOA always wins." That night I pulled my grandfather's old chest from under the bed, dragging it out with hands that trembled not from fear, but from a sense of urgency. Inside, wrapped in yellowing paper, was the deed, aged, fragile, but powerful. I laid it flat across my table, tracing the lines, my eyes widening as the truth unfolded. The boundaries stretched farther than my ranch, sweeping past the fence, past the road, past the cookie-cutter homes Karen guarded so fiercely. My grandfather had never sold the bordering parcel when the developers came. Every single house in that neighborhood, every lawn, every street lamp, they all sat on land still tied to my family's name. My pulse thudded in my ears, my breath uneven. Karen thought she had locked me in. But the truth was staggering. They were the ones trapped inside, the walls of my inheritance, and none of them even knew it yet. The HOA meeting buzzed like a hornet's nest as I walked in, boots echoing on the polished floor of the community center. Banners hung on the walls reading, "Together we thrive," but the room was thick with suspicion. Every eye locked on me. Karen stood at the podium, arms folded, lips tight. already scowling as if my presence alone were a crime. People whispered in clusters, their words a low hum, sharp and quick like knives cutting the air. I carried the leather folder in one hand, steady even though my chest thudded like a drum. When I reached the front, the air grew still, heavy enough to taste. Karen's voice cut through the silence. "You don't belong here," she snapped, each word dripping disdain. I laid the folder down slowly and met her glare. "Funny," I said, my tone cold, "because technically you all belong to me." The room erupted in chaos, gasps and mutters bouncing off the beige walls, chairs scraping as people leaned forward. Karen forced a brittle laugh, but her grip on the podium tightened until her knuckles went white. "What nonsense is this?" she demanded, her voice sharp but strained. I opened the folder, pulling out the aged deed and spreading it across the surface of the podium. The paper crackled under my fingers, its yellow edges glowing under the fluorescent lights. "This," I said, my voice firm, "is the original deed. My grandfather never sold the land beneath your precious community, which means every cul-de-sac, every fence, every perfect little lawn, you're all sitting on my property." Gasps rippled through the crowd again. Tom's face drained of color. Gloria muttered under her breath, eyes darting nervously toward Karen. Karen's smirk faltered, though she tried to mask it with another scoff. "You're bluffing," she hissed. Her sunglasses perched on her head now, eyes darting toward the paper like it might burn her. I leaned closer, letting my voice drop lower, the tension crackling between us. "Am I?" "Because tomorrow morning I can file for immediate control of the access roads. And the only gate key to this neighborhood?" I tapped my pocket slowly. "It's right here with me." A wave of murmurs spread across the room, neighbors twisting in their chairs, panic flickering in their eyes. One board member leaned in to examine the deed, his hands shaking so badly the paper rattled. The power shifted in that moment, tilting the room, and Karen knew it. Her voice cracked as she tried again. "You can't do this. You can't just take everything." Her desperation rang hollow, and for the first time, the crowd didn't look at me like the villain. They looked at her like the mask had slipped. I stood taller, letting the weight of silence hang until it pressed down on everyone. "You built a kingdom on land that was never yours," I said slowly, my words deliberate, echoing through the space. "Now you answer to me." The board members whispered furiously among themselves, flipping through binders and papers that suddenly meant nothing. Gloria clutched her purse to her chest, muttering about not knowing any of this. Even Tom, silent and obedient until now, buried his face in his hands, shame written across his features. Karen's control cracked like a pane of glass hit by a stone, each fracture spreading wide. The aftermath unfolded like a storm tearing through the neighborhood. Neighbors who once mocked me now appeared on my porch with trembling voices, asking for leniency, offering apologies that tasted stale. Gloria stood there one morning, stammering excuses, her eyes darting like a trapped bird. Tom came by late at night, his words hurried and hushed, suggesting a deal behind his wife's back. Yet Karen still clung to her pride like a lifeline, refusing to surrender. One evening, I found her at the gate, fists clenched around the bars, her voice raw from shouting. "You can't lock us out!" she screamed, fury twisting her face. "This is our community!" I stepped forward, the keys jingling softly in my hand, the fading sun painting the sky in streaks of fire. "No, Karen," I said, each word heavy as iron. "This is my ranch. You just built your little kingdom inside it." Her face reddened, trembling between rage and disbelief, her body shaking with the force of her fury. For a moment, I thought she might lunge at me, but instead she spun away, storming down the street as her neighbors watched in silence. Her voice carried behind her a ragged vow that she would fight, that she would get lawyers, that she would bring the county down on me. But her words were hollow, the sound of a queen losing her crown, echoes of power slipping through her grasp. The neighborhood lights flickered to life one by one, each window glowing faint in the dusk, trembling under the weight of uncertainty. I stood at the gate, fingers tight around the key, the night pressing in around me like a storm waiting to break. So what do you think? Was I right to flip the tables on Karen and her HOA? Should I forgive the neighbors who turned their backs on me, or let them live with Karen's mess? And do you think Karen's really done, or is she plotting her next move? Drop your thoughts below, and if you want to hear how far this feud really goes, make sure to hit that subscribe button.